So in terms of what we may lose in translation of humor, we can lose the humor, the laughter, we can lose the engagement with the audience, we can lose the empathy that laughter creates when we laugh at the same things. We normally share a sense of community, a sense of sharedness. And so and normally when we select a comedy film to watch, it's because we want to be relaxed and entertained and also learn about another culture, but to have that sense of sharedness. So if suddenly we do not have a humorous film, all of that can be lost. However, I do prefer to see translation not where things get lost, but where things get found. Because in the end, we have a film that speaks to us in many different ways, and humor is one of them, and it's an essential one. But if we don't have translation, that is lost because when we have Arabic film, for example, that is being watched by a Spanish audience, for example, or a Portuguese audience, if we don't have translation, then definitely everything will be lost. So I prefer to focus on what is gained, which is sharedness and intercultural communication, than what is lost. Ooh, that's a $1 million question, as they normally say. I don't think we can truly define humor. We can see it as something that triggers a particular emotion. There's also a physical reaction that we associate and we laugh. But sometimes we find something very funny and we don't laugh. So laughter is not necessarily the key element that makes us define humor. I think it's many experts have tried to define humor and couldn't. So I think we just need to enjoy it. Oh, irony is it's a different thing, and it can trigger humor. Very often in a film comes out of contradiction. Funnily enough, it comes out of someone saying something and then showing it on screen, an action, an object, a facial expression. If I say, for example, and so ironic meaning comes out of that. It's something to be enjoyed more than to be defined. Yes, context is everything, and context is everything in whatever moment of communication we are dealing with. For humor, it's particularly important because humor depends on, first, the audience understanding the elements at play that compose the moment of humor. So they need to understand what is being said, and when they don't, we can provide subtitles. They need to understand gestures and objects and facial expressions. Otherwise, when they connect with what is said, people might not understand the humor. But they also need to understand and share the cultural assumptions behind humor. So, for example, they need to be able to understand the cultural references, they need to understand political elements, they might need to also share the same understanding of what is funny and what is okay to laugh at. So context is everything. So if a translator doesn't analyze the context, that's when most often humor is lost. Oh yes, definitely. And so you were mentioning films from other decades. I invite everyone to watch a film that they thought was very funny when they were young, and sometimes I regret doing that because it ruins the film for me, in the sense that I thought it was very funny when I watched it when I was young, and now I watched it again and suddenly it's no longer so funny, and we need to ask ourselves why exactly. And sometimes it happens because what is acceptable for us to find funny also changes in time. So, for example, political issues, religion, things connected to religion tend to be very sensitive, but also things related to gender. The way women used to be portrayed in films and jokes that used to be made, now we don't really accept those anymore, so they are not funny. You know? So translation is all about providing access. So we need translation when a film in the end was produced for a particular audience, right? And now the film is distributed to a different market. It can be a different country, or the film is being watched in a different decade. Whatever the movement is in time or space, it's now being presented to an audience that is not the one that was initially thought of. So that new audience, because it is in a different space, in a different country, different culture, different background knowledge, or because it is in a different time, like I was talking about the films in the 1980s, they might not have access to what is being expressed in the movie because they don't share the same background, the same cultural references. And that can happen because people are from different cultures, and so we see gestures and objects. I'm Portuguese originally, and we use a lot of gestures, and I often have colleagues from different cultures that tell me, Sara, what do you mean by that? Because I just used the gesture. So it's not just words that are cultural specific, it's clothes and gestures, and that might not be accessible to a different audience. But sometimes, as you said before, it's also an issue of age. They might be from the same culture, but because they are younger or older, they might not understand what's happening or be able to interpret. For example, just the other day, someone was mentioning that meme that went around quite a few years ago of the bucket of ice. And for a younger audience, the bucket of ice doesn't mean anything because that's long gone already, right, in social media. So they don't know what that is referring to, so they can't understand. So sometimes audiences might be from the same culture, but they might not be able to access the meaning that is being communicated. So translation is there to find that solution.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sara.
No, thank you very much.